After a few months of transforming my drawings into Pop Mart style art toys, I gave my subscribers the chance to vote on the next toy design, and one clear favourite has emerged. Let's turn Call Me into a super cute Pop Mart style art toy. If you've somehow never heard of Pop Mart before, they're a popular manufacturer of art toys and blind boxes, and this time around I want to gather some inspiration directly from the source, so I've travelled up to London to visit one of their shops in person. This Carb Lover Molly series is super cute, so I'm gonna grab one of these, as well as a Peach Riot loading box and an obligatory Labubu box. Okay, let's take these home and see what we've got. First up, the Carb Lover Molly box. These are all pretty good, but my favourites are the Taiyaki Princess, Croissant Balaclava, and the Crocodile Bread. I think my least favourites are probably the Sweet Ballet and Afternoon Tea. Okay, what's it gonna be? Oh, it's Sweet Ballet. Okay, she's not actually too bad in person. This shiny donut icing looks pretty realistic. Okay, maybe we'll have some more luck with the others. Make sure you stick around though, as I'll be opening those later. Let's jump into Procreate on my iPad and start designing my very own Call Me Pop Mart style art toy. I like to imagine that Call Me is like a teenager from the early 2000s, so designing my art toy based on that era should be a fun challenge. Maybe she could be holding a cell phone like she's gossiping with a friend. This cross-legged pose feels a bit too clunky though. Maybe she could be kneeling instead. Nice. Not only does this look cuter, but it should be easier to sculpt and print. Okay, let's add the colours from my original illustration and work out what her outfit is going to be. To match the early 2000s vibe that I'm going for, I'm going to give her a sleeveless crop top, white trousers, a skinny purple belt, and some simple purple shoes. When I create colour compositions for projects like this, my favourite thing to do is match colours. In this case, her shoes and her eyes are the same shade of deep purple. Connecting tones throughout a design can really make the overall colour scheme much more visually appealing. Okay, I think this design is going to work really well, but just to be sure, let's run a quick test. When creating my Pop Mart style art toys, test sculpts and prints are vital, especially for more complex designs like this one. If I spent hours sculpting this design on Nomad Sculpt only to realise that it prints badly and it can't even stand up, I'd have wasted a whole bunch of time. So let's start with a pose test. After importing the same head shape from my previous art toy designs, I'm reshaping this body to suit the new pose. We can then add the limbs using this tube tool. I personally like to keep my art toys quite blobby looking, similar to Pop Mart's Crybaby. Chunky limbs, round hands, and blended seams not only look good, but it makes the filament printing process easier. Looking good. I love how her head is slightly tilted into her hand, adding an extra bit of emotion. Next up, we might as well make a phone for this pose test too. This is super easy to make. I'm simply reshaping a cube, adding an antenna, and using the mask tool to extrude details from the surface. Then, after voxel subtracting a space for the phone and a peg hole for the neck, this initial test pose can now be printed. I'm using my Bambu Lab X1C for this project as it's super reliable. Okay, about 4 hours later, everything has printed and can be removed from the print bed. Right off the bat, I can see that the printed supports have left marks on the underside of her head, and this is fine, but I've also just remembered that I'll be covering the top of her head in phones, so it makes more sense to print the head upside down next time to keep the chin nice and smooth. Also, I didn't add nearly enough supports under the arms, so now they're all loose and hollow. Other than this, however, everything seems to assemble well, and most importantly, she doesn't fall over. Okay, I am fairly confident with this design now, so let's get back into Nomad Sculpt to add on all of the details. Using the same mask tool as before, I'm drawing on Call Me's eyes, eyebrows, and eyeballs. She will have more features on her face, such as a mouth, nose, and hair, but I like these details to be flat, kind of like stickers, so there's no need to sculpt them on. After adding a simple crop top and trousers using this same masking method, we can get to work on these cell phones. Looking at my original Call Me artwork, I can see 4 different phone types. There's a phone with an antenna, a phone without an antenna, and 2 flip phones, one open and one closed. I need to make enough phones to cover the entirety of Call Me's head, so for efficiency's sake, I'm going to sculpt these 4 types, print multiple of each, and reuse them across the areas we can't see from the front. You know me by now, work smarter, not harder. Also, to make sure that this flip phone can fit against her scalp neatly, I'm going to print the upper and lower parts separately. This should allow me to position the phone as open or closed as I need it to be. I'm feeling great about this final 3D model, so let's send it off to my 3D printer. printer. Okay, that's gonna take a little while to print, so in the meantime, let's open my second PopMart box. This time, it's the Lil Peach Riot Loading Series. This is my first ever Peach Riot figure, so I am so excited. Let's see what I would be happy with. Gigi Fire is cute, and maybe Frankie Dancer? I mean, they're all cute to be honest. Okay, I wonder what it'll be. Oh my god, it's Fire Gigi. Wow, her color scheme is so good. I love the orange of her sleeves and her hair. Plus, she's got a real chain necklace. This is crazy attention to detail. Looking at the box again, I think Gigi Fire is probably the best out of all of them in my opinion. I am super happy with her. Do you own any Peach Riot figures? Let me know in the comments below. Okay, it's time to get back to the 3D printer. Everything has now fully printed, so let's remove each piece from the print bed and see if it fits together nicely. There are some minor defects on the arms and the top of the head, but these will be super simple to fix. And if you're wondering why she is missing an ear, I shaved it off to make space for this cell phone. I'm also really happy with her overall size, especially when she's placed next to Sticky and Tulip Bantu knots. Reusing the same head sculpt for each of these toys has maintained a great level of consistency. By the way, if you'd like to see how I made these two PopMart style art toys, check out my playlist here. Moving on to the phones, these have printed almost perfectly. I decided to add support rafts underneath the closed flip phones as the curved edge may have warped or fallen whilst printing, and I'm glad I did. To take these 3D printed surfaces from good to great, however, we do need to do a bit of surface preparation. Layer lines and support defects can make even the best paint job look a bit mediocre, so let's tackle it now using some Milliput. Milliput is a 2-part epoxy putty, and I seem to use it in every single project. It's extremely useful stuff. After mixing part A and part B together, we can then squish it into any scraggly surfaces, primarily on the top of her head and under her arms. Then, once fully cured, these putty covered areas can be sanded smooth using sandpaper. By the way, please make sure that you wear a mask when sanding Milliput, as you really don't want epoxy dust in your lungs. Now that these pieces are super smooth, I'm going to spray on a few coats of this all-surface primer. I've gone for a white primer this time around, as it should make the white trousers a little bit easier to paint. Speaking of which, we can now start painting. So let's start with the base layers. After mixing up the perfect skin tone, I'm airbrushing several thin coats of it onto the head and the body. Getting this airbrush has been a total game changer for my projects. I don't know how I survived without it for so long. I also don't know how you have survived so long without being subscribed to my YouTube channel. My current goal is 75,000 subscribers. Let's see if we can do it. The skin tone layers have now fully dried, so it's time to paint the whites of her eyes and her white trousers. When layering thin coats of paint with a brush, I swear by this slow dry fluid by Liquitex. Mixing a few drops into your paint not only thins it out to prevent clumping, but it significantly increases the overall drying time. There is nothing worse than adding more paint to a project only for the initial layers to smudge and peel away. Okay, these base layers are looking great. Let's get to work on these clothes, starting with her crop top. After using a bit of a lighter pink to cover the peachy skin tone overspray, I'm painting her shoes a deep purple colour. And then, after leaving this to dry for a couple of hours, I can layer a slightly darker pink onto her top. This shade matches my original plan a lot better and kind of complements the darker shoes quite nicely. Now, all that's left to add is the skinny purple belt. I do not trust myself to paint this on freehand, so I've used a pencil to mark it out first. This can then be filled in using some light purple paint. Let's leave this to dry and move on to her head. First things first, I'm filling in her eyes using the same shade of purple as her shoes. Call Me is the first of my PopMart style art toys to have colourful eyes, so I'm really hoping this looks good. Let's paint on her hair whilst these dry. This character's hair was originally inspired by super slicked down 1920s styles. A great example of this was commonly seen on singer, dancer and activist Josephine Baker. Let's use my dotting tool to form these iconic curls. I like to use my dotting tool for small details like this, as one wrong move with the paintbrush would require a lot of cleanup. Gently spreading the paint around also gives me a lot more control. When painting thin eyebrows like this, on the other hand, a regular sized flat brush is the way to go. Not only do bristles like this hold their shape better, but they can hold more paint, making it much easier to colour in smaller areas. Moving on to the eyeliner and the lashes, I chose not to film the majority of this section as I needed to use 110% of my brain power to not smudge the paint. If you're curious to how I did it though, I simply used the same brush as before and held my breath to steady my hands. It sounds weird, but it works. In my original Call Me illustration, there is an extra little detail within her eyes. Alongside the white pupils that most of my characters have, I added tiny little phone symbols beside them. Small touches like these can really bring a piece together. Okay, all that's left to add to her face is a simplified nose and mouth. After sketching them on with a brown pencil, I'm using the same dotting tool that I used for her pupils to gently stamp the black paint into place. Just like my original sketch, I want her to be gossiping into her cell phone once she's fully assembled, so I'm painting her mouth off to one side like this. Okay, we've made some really good progress, so I'm going to reward myself by opening this final Pop Mart blind box. These are all pretty cute, except for this skull thing and the fire hydrant. If I get one of these, I genuinely think I will scream. Okay, let's see what it is. Oh my god, it's Mailbox Labubu. Okay, I am happy with this one. I love how he's peeking through the little mailbox opening. I don't know if I'd want to put my letters in there though. Right, let's get back to finishing off my own Pop Mart style art toy. It's finally time to work on these phones. To keep them steady whilst I paint them, I'm attaching the phones onto lollipop sticks using double-sided tape. These can then be airbrushed purple, pink, and lilac. These colours don't match my original illustration perfectly, but I'm sure they will still look good. After leaving these to dry for a couple of hours, I'm now adding shading to the buttons and painting the cell phone screens black. Now, I know that the screens are not meant to be black, but I have a plan. Painting the cell phone screen details by hand would take ages, and at this scale would probably not look that great either. So, I'm going to work smarter instead of harder yet again and print them out instead. Luckily, I still have the original phone screen details from my original drawing, so using my 3D models as size templates, I'm pasting them into place using Photoshop. Then, after altering the hue of each screen, these tiny decals can be printed out using my cheap Epson printer. Let's cut one out to see if it fits within the phone. This looks so good. Painting the surface underneath was also a great idea, as these screens will now have a perfectly even border around them. Let's chop up the rest and stick them into place using some PVA glue. Looking good. This phone, however, is the one that Call Me will be holding in her hand, so I've whipped up a new decal showing an ongoing phone call. It's kind of like she's speaking to a cat. I love it. All we need to do is stick this one into place as well, and I am so happy with how these phones have turned out. It's almost time to assemble everything, but there's a very important detail that I have yet to make: the phone charms. I was going to use polymer clay for these, but sadly I've run out, so more milli parts will have to do. After mixing together a small amount of this epoxy putty, I'm using this misprinted sticky head as a size guide. Plus, the curvature of her forehead should help me to align these charms perfectly. After adding the smaller details and leaving it to fully harden, we can start to paint these charms. To maintain some colour continuity, I'm painting the main sections with the same crop top shade of pink. Then, all that's left to do is add the strawberry seeds and the eyes and the noses with my dotting tool. All of the pieces for my Pop Mart style Call Me art toy are now complete, so it's finally assembly time. All we need to do is place the head onto the body, glue the phones and the charms into place, attach some pink filament strands for the charm straps, and see how it all comes together. And here we have it. This Call Me Pop Mart style art toy is finally complete, and I am thrilled with how she looks. Printing the phone screens in different colours was such a good idea. They add so much to this finished result. Also, this wasn't planned at all, but when you put Call Me and Tulip Bantu Knot side by side like this, it kind of looks like they're both listening to a phone call. Maybe they're gossiping about Sticky. I am having so much fun creating these svvart toys that I am definitely going to be making some more. I will also be posting a poll for my next art toy soon, so be sure to vote for the next one. Also, just like I mentioned before, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please consider doing so. My current goal is 75,000 subscribers, and when we hit this, I will be hosting a giveaway. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.